My fiancé disappeared for 2 weeks, so I decided to go to his house quietly. I told myself it was just worry. That's what you're supposed to feel when someone you love goes silent, right? 2 weeks without a text, a call, an explanation. His mother said she hadn't heard from him either. His best friend claimed he was dealing with some stuff. Everyone had a reason why I shouldn't panic. Why I should just wait. But I'm 32 years old, and I've learned that waiting rarely brings the truth. Action does. So on a Thursday afternoon in early November, I drove across Seattle to the Ballard neighborhood where Jake lived, where we were supposed to live together after the wedding in June. The key was still on my ring. He'd given it to me 6 months ago, the night he proposed on the pier at Golden Gardens, the sunset turning everything gold and possible. I pulled up to the narrow 2-story house with blue trim and a small front porch. His truck was in the driveway. That should have been a relief. Instead, my stomach tightened. I walked up the steps, my breath visible in the cold air. I slipped the key into the lock as quietly as I could. The door opened without a sound. The living room was dim, curtains drawn. A coffee mug sat on the side table, still half full. His jacket, the gray one I'd bought him last Christmas, hung on the back of a chair. Everything looked normal. Everything looked wrong. That's when I heard it. A sound from upstairs. Not loud. A shuffle. A creak. Then a low murmur, like someone trying to stay quiet but failing. I moved toward the staircase, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Each step felt like a choice. Turn around, leave, pretend you didn't come here, or keep going. Find out. I kept going. The bedroom door was half open. I could see the unmade bed, the pile of clothes on the floor. And then I heard it again. Something shifting. Something moving beneath the bed frame. I stepped into the room. Jake? Silence. Then a small, panicked gasp. I knelt down and lifted the edge of the duvet that had been hanging over the side, brushing the floor. A hand came out first. Small, pale, with chipped red nail polish. Then an arm. Then a face. Young, maybe mid-20s, eyes wide with fear and something else. Guilt. She crawled out slowly, dragging a purse and a bundle of clothes with her. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her mouth half open, like she was trying to decide whether to run or explain. I stood up, my legs shaking. "Who are you?" She swallowed. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was... Where is he?" She glanced toward the bathroom door. It was closed. The shower wasn't running, but I could hear movement inside. I walked over and pushed the door open. Jake stood there, fully dressed, leaning against the sink, staring at his phone. When he saw me, his face went white. "Liv." That's all he said. My name. Like it was an accusation. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong by showing up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, then at her, then back at him. 2 weeks, I said quietly. You disappeared for 2 weeks, and this is where you were. He opened his mouth, closed it, ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. Complicated. I repeated the word like I was tasting something bitter. You're engaged. To me. How is that complicated? The girl, woman, whatever she was, started edging toward the door. I held up a hand. Stay, I said, not angry, just firm. I want to know what I'm walking away from. Jake looked at her, then at me. Liv, please, let's talk about this downstairs, just the two of us. No. I folded my arms. Right here, right now. Who is she? He exhaled, a long, defeated sound. Her name is Morgan. We've been seeing each other for a few months. A few months. My voice was steady, but inside, something was cracking. While you were planning a wedding with me. while you were talking about kids and a house and a future. I didn't plan this, he said, and there was something almost pleading in his tone. It just happened. I didn't know how to tell you. So you didn't. I looked at Morgan. She was clutching her purse like a shield. Did you know about me? She nodded. Barely. Not at first. But then, yeah. He told me he was going to end it with you. That he just needed time. Time. I laughed. It came out sharp and hollow. Time to what? Figure out how to break my heart more efficiently? Jake stepped forward. Liv, I never wanted to hurt you. Stop. I held up my hand again and he froze. Don't say that. Don't insult me by pretending this was about protecting me. This was about you. Your choices. Your cowardice. I turned and walked out of the bathroom, out of the bedroom, down the stairs. My hands were shaking, but my mind was sharp and cold and clear. Jake followed me. Liv, wait, please, can we just... I spun around at the bottom of the stairs. Can we just what, Jake? Pretend this didn't happen? Go to couples therapy? Pretend I didn't just find your girlfriend hiding under the bed like this is some kind of bad sitcom? He flinched. Good. I'm calling off the wedding, I said. I'm keeping the deposits we already paid since I'm the one who's going to have to explain this to 200 people, and I'm taking my key back. I pulled the key off my ring and set it on the table by the door. It made a small, final sound. Liv, don't call me, don't text me, don't show up at my apartment, we're done. I walked out, closing the door behind me with the kind of control that comes from knowing that if you let go, you'll shatter. I sat in my car for a long time, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. My name is Olivia Grant. I'm a project manager at a tech startup in South Lake Union. I'm good at my job. I'm good at planning, at organizing, at seeing 3 steps ahead. I thought I was good at reading people too. I was wrong about that. Jake and I met 3 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. He was charming, funny, easy to talk to. He worked in sales for a medical supply company. He liked hiking and craft beer and old Tarantino movies. He said he wanted a partner, not just a girlfriend, someone he could build a life with. I believed him. We moved in together. Well, I kept my apartment, but I stayed at his place most nights. We talked about getting a dog. We looked at houses in Wallingford and Fremont. We made lists of baby names, half joking, half serious. When he proposed, I cried. I thought I'd found it. The thing everyone talks about. The person who sees you and chooses you and stays. I was wrong about that too. I drove back to my apartment in Capitol Hill, parked in the alley behind the building, and sat there in the dark for another 20 minutes. I kept replaying it. The hand coming out from under the bed. Her face. His face. The way he said my name like I was the problem. Finally, I went inside, locked the door, and stood in the middle of my small living room, surrounded by wedding binders and fabric swatches, and a dress hanging in a garment bag on the closet door. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. Found the name I needed, Rachel Hugh, family law attorney. We'd met at a networking event 2 years ago and stayed in touch. I sent her a text. Hi, Rachel. I need to talk to you about ending an engagement and possibly other legal steps. Are you available tomorrow? Her response came 5 minutes later. Absolutely. 10 a.m. at my office. I'm so sorry, Liv. We'll figure this out. I set the phone down and walked to the window. The city lights stretched out in every direction, cold and bright and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Jake was probably apologizing to Morgan, or making excuses, or convincing himself he was the victim in all this. I didn't care. For the first time in 2 weeks, maybe longer, I felt something other than confusion or hope or dread. I felt clarity. The wedding was off. The life I thought I was building was a lie. But I was still here, still standing, still breathing. And that, I realized, was enough to start with. I turned away from the window, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly, feeling the coldness spread through my chest. Tomorrow, I would call my mother. I would email the venue. I would start the work of untangling my life from his. Tonight, I would let myself feel the weight of it, the humiliation, the anger, the strange, unexpected relief. Because at least now I knew. At least now I could stop waiting. The apartment was quiet. The city hummed outside. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the pain and the shock, something new was beginning to take shape. A boundary, a decision, a future that was mine alone. The next morning I woke up at 6:30, which was earlier than I needed to, but later than I'd expected. I thought I'd be awake all night, replaying every moment, every detail. Instead, I'd fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep around midnight, the kind that feels less like rest and more like your body shutting down to protect itself. I made coffee, strong, black, the way I'd learned to drink it during finals week in college when I had 3 projects due and no time for cream or sugar or anything that slowed me down. I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. The first email I wrote was to my mother. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you not to call me right away. The wedding is off. Jake and I are done. I'm okay, but I need a little time before we talk about it. I'll call you this weekend. I love you." I hit send before I could second-guess the wording. The second email was to my maid of honor, Tessa, who'd been my best friend since sophomore year at the University of Washington. "Tess, wedding's canceled. I'll explain everything soon, but I need you to help me with something. Can you come over tonight? Bring wine. Or ice cream. Or both." The third email was to the venue. "To whom it may concern, I am writing to inform you that the wedding scheduled for June 14th under the name Olivia Grant and Jacob Brennan is hereby canceled. Per the contract, I understand that deposits are non-refundable. I am requesting documentation of all payments made to date and confirmation that no further charges will be applied to my account. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter." Professional, detached. The tone I used at work when a project went sideways and I needed to control the damage without showing panic. I sent it. Then I sat back and stared at the screen, my hands wrapped around the coffee mug, feeling the heat seep into my palms. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Olivia Marie Grant. Call me, now." I didn't. Another buzz. "Tessa. What? I'm coming over at 7. Do not talk to him. Do not let him gaslight you. I'm bringing tequila." I smiled despite everything. Tessa knew me well enough to know I'd need someone who wouldn't ask if I was sure, who wouldn't suggest maybe it was a misunderstanding, who wouldn't try to fix it. She'd just show up and sit with me in the wreckage. At 9:30, I got dressed. Black jeans, a charcoal sweater, boots. I pulled my hair back into a low ponytail and put on the bare minimum of makeup, just enough to look like I hadn't been crying, even though I hadn't. I wasn't sure why I hadn't cried yet. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I was too angry. Maybe I just didn't have any tears left for someone who didn't deserve them. Rachel's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of quiet professionalism that made you feel like your problems could be solved if you just signed the right documents. She met me in the lobby herself, a petite woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a warm handshake. "Liv," she said, "come on up." Her office was on the 10th floor, with a view of Elliott Bay and the ferries cutting white lines across the gray water. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and poured me a cup of tea from a small electric kettle on the credenza. "Tell me what happened," she said simply. So I did. I told her about the 2 weeks of silence, about going to Jake's house, about the woman under the bed, the look on his face, the way he tried to make it sound like something that just happened, like he was a passenger in his own life. Rachel listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "First, I'm sorry. That's a betrayal on multiple levels and you didn't deserve it. I nodded. It helped to hear someone say it plainly. Second, she continued, let's talk about what you need. You said the wedding's off. That's clear. What about shared assets? Do you have joint accounts, property, any financial entanglements? No, I said. We kept our finances separate. I have my apartment, he has his house. We were planning to buy something together after the wedding, but we never did. Good. That makes this cleaner. What about the engagement ring? I looked down at my left hand. The ring was still there. A simple solitaire, 1 carat, white gold. I'd loved it when he gave it to me. Now it felt like a weight. I don't know, I said. Legally, do I have to give it back? In Washington, an engagement ring is considered a conditional gift, Rachel explained. If the wedding doesn't happen, technically it should be returned. But if he's the one who caused the breakup through infidelity, you have a stronger argument to keep it. Did you want to keep it? I thought about it. The ring was worth maybe $8,000. Not nothing. But every time I looked at it, I'd think of him, of her, of the lie. No, I said. I'll give it back. I don't want anything from him. Rachel made a note. That's your choice. I'd recommend you return it in writing, with a witness or via insured mail, so there's a record. You don't want him claiming you kept it and trying to make trouble later. Noted. Now, about the wedding expenses. Who paid for what? I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been tracking everything. I paid for the venue deposit, $5,000. The photographer deposit, $2,000. The florist, $1,500. My dress, $3,000. Invitations, $800. Hair and makeup trials, $400. He paid for the DJ deposit, $1,200. And the rehearsal dinner venue, $1,000. Rachel did the math quickly. So you're in for about $12,700, and he's in for about $2,200. You're not married, so there's no legal obligation for him to reimburse you unless you had a written agreement stating otherwise. Did you? No. Then realistically, you're absorbing your losses and he's absorbing his. If you want to pursue reimbursement, you could file a small claims case, but it's going to be more trouble than it's worth, and it'll keep you tied to him for months. My advice? Let it go. Take the financial hit and move on. I hated that advice, but I knew she was right. Okay, I said. One more thing, Rachel said, leaning forward slightly. Do you have any concerns about him harassing you? Showing up at your place? Contacting you repeatedly? Anything like that? I thought about Jake. He wasn't violent. He wasn't aggressive. But he was persistent. He hated loose ends. He'd want to talk things through, to explain, to make sure I didn't hate him. Maybe, I said. He'll probably try to reach out, a lot. Then I'd recommend you send him one clear, written message, text or email, stating that you do not wish to have any further contact with him and that any attempts to contact you will be considered harassment. Save that message. If he violates it, you have grounds for a protection order if needed. I hadn't thought that far ahead. The idea that I might need legal protection from someone I'd been planning to marry was surreal. But then again, 24 hours ago, I didn't think I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office at all. I'll do that, I said. Rachel smiled, a small, knowing smile. You're handling this better than most people would. I don't feel like I'm handling it at all. That's normal. But you're here. You're taking action. You're thinking ahead. That's more than a lot of people do in the first week. I left her office an hour later with a list of action items, a clearer sense of what I needed to do, and a strange, hollow feeling in my chest that I couldn't quite name. I went back to my apartment and spent the afternoon making phone calls. The venue was polite but firm. No refunds. The photographer offered to apply my deposit to a future session if I ever needed portraits. The florist said she'd cancel the order and refund half the deposit as a courtesy, which was more than I expected. I called my boss and told him I needed to take a personal day on Monday. He didn't ask questions. I'd worked there for 4 years and had never taken unscheduled time off. He just said, "Take care of yourself, Liv." By the time Tessa arrived at 7, I was exhausted. She came through the door with a bag of takeout Thai food, a bottle of tequila, and a look on her face that was half fury, half heartbreak. "Where is he?" she said. "Do I need to slash his tires?" "Because I will. I've been watching YouTube tutorials." I laughed, and it felt good. "No, I just need you to sit with me and help me figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do now." We sat on my couch, eating pad thai and drinking margaritas that Tessa made in my blender with too much lime and not enough triple sec, and I told her everything. She listened, occasionally interjecting with creative insults directed at Jake, and when I finished, she set down her drink and looked at me. "You know what I think?" she said. "What?" "I think you dodged a bullet. I think if you'd married him, this would have happened anyway. Maybe a year in, maybe 5, maybe 10. But it would have happened, and it would have been so much messier. You would have had a mortgage together, maybe kids, and you would have been trapped." I stared at the ceiling. I know you're right, but it still feels like shit." "Of course it does. He's a piece of shit, but you're not. And you're going to get through this." "How?" "One day at a time. One phone call, one email, one decision at a time. And you're going to let yourself be angry. You're allowed to be furious, Liv. You don't have to be the bigger person right now." I nodded. I hadn't given myself permission to be angry yet. I'd been too focused on logistics, on damage control, on keeping it together. But she was right. I was angry. Tessa stayed until almost midnight. When she left, she hugged me hard and said, "Text me if you need anything. I mean it. 3 a.m. Doesn't matter. I'm here." After she was gone, I sat alone in the quiet apartment and opened my phone. I scrolled through my messages with Jake. 3 years of texts. "Good morning. How was your day? I love you. Can you pick up milk? Did you see this article? I'm thinking about you." Thousands of messages. A whole history. I selected the thread and archived it. I didn't delete it. Not yet. But I didn't want to see it every time I opened my phone. Then I opened a new message. "Jake, I do not want any further contact with you. Do not call, text, or come to my apartment. We are done. If you need to reach me for any legal or financial reason, you can communicate through Rachel Hugh, my attorney, whose contact information I will provide separately. Any attempts to contact me directly will be considered harassment. Olivia." I read it twice, then sent it. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Liv, please just let me explain." I didn't respond. I turned off my notifications from his number and set my phone face down on the table. The apartment was quiet again. The city lights glowed through the window, and I sat there, feeling the weight of the day settle over me, heavy and cold and real. But underneath it, something else was stirring. Not hope, exactly. Not yet. But something like resolve. I thought about the woman under the bed, Morgan. I wondered if she knew what she was getting into. If Jake had told her the same things he'd told me. If she believed him. I wondered if I should warn her. Then I decided I wouldn't. She'd made her choice. And I'd made mine. I got up and walked to my bedroom. The garment bag with my wedding dress was still hanging on the closet door. I unzipped it slowly and looked at the dress. It was beautiful. Ivory lace, fitted bodice, a soft A-line skirt. I'd tried on 30 dresses before I found this one. I zipped the bag back up and pulled it off the hanger. Tomorrow, I'd return it. I had 60 days, and I was only 3 weeks in. I'd get most of my money back. Tonight, I'd just put it in the back of the closet and close the door. I changed into pajamas, washed my face, and climbed into bed. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jake. "I love you. I made a mistake. Please." I blocked his number. Then I turned off my phone completely, plugged it in across the room, and pulled the blankets up to my chin. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened, everything I'd lost, everything I still had to do. And then, finally, I closed my eyes. The weekend was a blur of phone calls, emails, and explanations. I called my mother on Saturday morning and spent an hour on the phone while she cycled through shock, anger, and an overwhelming urge to drive up there and give that boy a piece of my mind. I told her not to. I told her I was handling it. I wasn't sure I believed that, but I needed her to. My father got on the line at the end and said in his quiet, careful way, "You're stronger than you think, Livy. You always have been." I cried after we hung up, not for Jake, for the life I'd imagined, for the future I'd planned, for the version of myself who'd believed in happy endings. By Sunday, I'd contacted everyone who needed to know: bridesmaids, groomsmen, close family. I kept the message simple and consistent. The wedding is off. Jake and I have ended our relationship. I appreciate your support and understanding during this time. Some people asked questions. I didn't answer them. Some people offered condolences. I thanked them. Some people, mostly Jake's friends, didn't respond at all. That told me everything I needed to know. On Monday, I returned the wedding dress. The bridal shop gave me a full refund minus a 20% restocking fee, which felt like insult added to injury. But I didn't argue. I just signed the paperwork and walked out with a check. I deposited it immediately and watched the number appear in my account. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closing a chapter I'd never wanted to end this way. That afternoon, I went back to work. My team had been told I was dealing with a personal matter, and they had the good sense not to pry. My boss pulled me aside briefly and asked if I was okay. I said yes, because what else could I say? I threw myself into my projects. We were in the middle of launching a new feature for our app, and there were 1,000 moving pieces: engineering, design, marketing, customer support. I coordinated meetings, updated timelines, reviewed wireframes, and sent so many Slack messages that by the end of the day my eyes burned. But it was good. It kept me focused. It kept me from thinking. For a few hours at least. That night, I came home to find a package on my doorstep. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought it might be from Jake. Flowers, a letter, some desperate attempt to win me back. But the return address was from his mother. I carried it inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a small jewelry box and a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. "Olivia, I'm so sorry for what my son has done. You deserved better. I'm returning this to you because I think you should have it, not him. I hope you find happiness. Linda." I opened the jewelry box. It was the engagement ring. Jake had already sent it to his mother, probably trying to get ahead of things, to control the narrative, and she'd sent it to me. I stared at it for a long time, the diamond catching the light from the lamp on my side table. Then I closed the box and put it in my dresser drawer. I'd deal with it later. Right now, I had other things to handle. On Tuesday, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Olivia Grant?" "Yes." "This is Detective Maria Ochoa with the Seattle Police Department. I'm calling about a report that was filed regarding an incident involving Jacob Brennan. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" My stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "A woman named Morgan Reese filed a harassment complaint. She mentioned your name in her statement and said you might have relevant information. I wanted to reach out and see if you'd be willing to speak with me." I sat down slowly. What happened? I can't share details of an open case, but I can tell you that Ms. Reese has expressed concerns about Mr. Brennan's behavior following the end of their relationship. If you've had similar experiences or have any information that might be relevant, I'd like to hear it. I thought about Jake's texts, his insistence, the way he didn't respect boundaries. "I can talk to you, I said. When? Would tomorrow work? I can meet you somewhere convenient. Coffee shop, my office, wherever you're comfortable. Your office is fine. We set a time for Wednesday afternoon, and after I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. Morgan had filed a harassment complaint, which meant Jake hadn't stopped. He'd kept pushing, kept ignoring boundaries, kept trying to control the situation, and now it had escalated. I felt a strange mix of vindication and dread. Vindication because it confirmed what I'd suspected, that Jake's apologies and explanations weren't about remorse. They were about control. Dread because I realized how close I'd come to marrying someone who didn't understand the word no. On Wednesday, I met Detective Ochoa at the precinct. She was in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Rachel. She led me to a small interview room and offered me water, which I accepted. "Thank you for coming in," she said, pulling out a notebook. "I know this is probably uncomfortable." "It's fine," I said. "I want to help if I can." "Good. Let me start by asking, what was your relationship with Jacob Brennan?" "We were engaged. The wedding was supposed to be in June, but I ended things 2 weeks ago after I found out he was having an affair." She made a note. "With Morgan Reese?" "Yes." "And how did you find out?" I told her the story. The 2 weeks of silence, going to his house, finding Morgan under the bed, the confrontation. Ochoa listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "After you ended the engagement, did Mr. Brennan attempt to contact you?" "Yes. He texted me multiple times. I sent him a message stating that I didn't want any further contact and that he should communicate through my attorney if necessary. Then I blocked his number." "Do you still have those messages?" "I archived them. But yes. I'd like to get copies if possible. They might be relevant to the pattern of behavior we're investigating." I nodded. "I can send them to you." "Did he ever show up at your home or workplace after you asked him not to contact you?" "No." "Did he threaten you in any way?" "No, he was just persistent. He wanted to explain, to fix things. He didn't seem to understand that I was done." Ochoa leaned back in her chair. "That's consistent with what Ms. Reese described. According to her, after their relationship ended, Mr. Brennan began showing up at her apartment unannounced, sending dozens of messages a day, and contacting her friends and coworkers to try to get to her. She's expressed fear for her safety." I felt a chill run through me. That could have been me, if I hadn't been clear, if I hadn't blocked him, if I hadn't involved Rachel. That could have been me. "Is there anything else you think I should know?" Ochoa asked. I thought for a moment. "Just that. He's very good at seeming reasonable, at making you feel like you're the one being unreasonable if you don't give him what he wants. He's not loud or aggressive. He's just relentless." She nodded. "That's helpful. Thank you." I left the precinct feeling shaken, not because of what had happened to me, but because of what hadn't. I'd gotten out before it got worse. Morgan hadn't. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I owed her something, a warning, an apology, something. But I didn't have her number. I didn't know how to reach her. And maybe that was for the best. She was dealing with it now, and I had to keep moving forward. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine and my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. I updated my relationship status on social media. I didn't post anything dramatic. I didn't write a long explanation. I just changed it from engaged to single and turned off comments. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I'm so sorry, Liv. Let me know if you need anything." I responded to the people I cared about and ignored the rest. Tessa sent me a meme of a woman kicking down a door with the caption, "Thriving." I sent back a laughing emoji and a heart. It wasn't true. I wasn't thriving. But I was surviving. And that felt like enough. By the end of the second week, I'd settled into a strange new routine. I worked, I went to the gym, I cooked simple meals and watched trashy TV and went to bed early. I didn't think about Jake, or at least I tried not to. But sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake and replay the whole thing. The 2 weeks of silence, the hand under the bed, the look on his face when he said, "It's complicated." And I'd feel the anger rise again, sharp and hot. Not just at him, at myself. For not seeing it sooner, for ignoring the signs, for believing that love was enough to build a life on. But then I'd remember what Tessa said. "You dodged a bullet." And I'd remind myself that I was here. I was okay. I was moving forward. One day at a time. One decision at a time. One breath at a time. On a rainy Thursday evening, 3 weeks after everything fell apart, I got a text from Rachel. "Just a heads up, Jake's attorney reached out. He wants to settle the ring situation and close things out. Are you still okay with returning it?" I looked at the jewelry box in my dresser drawer. "Yes, let's get it done. I'll handle it. You won't have to see him or speak to him. I'll arrange for it to be returned via insured courier. Should be done by next week." "Thank you. You're doing great, Liv, really." I set the phone down and stood at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The city was dark and wet and cold, but inside my apartment it was warm. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't anger or sadness or confusion. I felt free. Not happy, not yet, but free. And that was something. A month after I found Morgan under Jake's bed, I started therapy. It wasn't something I'd planned. I'd always thought therapy was for people who couldn't handle things on their own, which I now recognize as both arrogant and deeply ignorant. But when I found myself sitting in my car outside the grocery store at 7:30 on a Tuesday night, unable to remember why I'd driven there or what I needed to buy, I realized I wasn't handling things as well as I thought. I called my insurance company the next day and got a list of providers. The first 3 weren't taking new patients. The 4th had an opening in 6 weeks. The 5th, Dr. Nina Okoye, had a cancellation and could see me that Thursday. Her office was in Fremont, in a converted house with a blue door and a small garden out front that looked like someone actually cared about it. The waiting room had soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and a white noise machine that made it impossible to hear what was happening in the other rooms. Dr. Okoye was a black woman in her 50s, with short natural hair, glasses, and a calm presence that made me feel like I could say anything, and she wouldn't judge me. "Tell me what brought you here," she said after we'd settled into her office. So I told her about Jake, about Morgan, about the wedding that didn't happen, about the police report, about the ring I'd returned, about the way I felt like I was fine during the day but fell apart at random moments, in the grocery store, at a stoplight, in the middle of a work meeting when someone mentioned June. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a tablet. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "That's a lot to process," she said finally. "And you've been doing it mostly alone." "I have friends, family." "I didn't say you were alone. I said you've been processing it alone. There's a difference." I nodded, feeling something loosen in my chest. "What I'm hearing," she continued, "is that you've been in crisis management mode. You've handled the logistics, the legal stuff, the financial stuff, the social stuff, but you haven't given yourself space to actually feel what happened." "I've felt it," I said. "I've been angry, sad, confused." "Have you grieved?" I blinked. "Grieved? You lost something. Not just a relationship, but a future, a vision of your life. That's a real loss, even if the relationship wasn't healthy. Even if ending it was the right choice." I looked down at my hands. I don't know how to grieve something I'm also relieved to be done with. You can feel both things at once, relief and loss, anger and sadness. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We talked for 50 minutes, and by the end, I felt wrung out and lighter at the same time. She gave me homework, journaling prompts, breathing exercises, a list of questions to ask myself when I felt overwhelmed. I scheduled another appointment for the following week. As I drove home, I realized something. For the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel like I had to have all the answers. I just had to show up and do the work. Work became both a refuge and a challenge. On one hand, it gave me structure. Meetings, deadlines, deliverables, things I could control and measure and complete. On the other hand, it meant being around people who knew what had happened and didn't know what to say. My team tried to be supportive, but it was awkward. They'd ask how I was doing in that careful, tentative way that made it clear they didn't actually want details. I'd say I was fine, and we'd move on. My boss, David, was different. He pulled me aside 2 weeks after I'd returned from my personal day and said, "I'm not going to ask how you're doing because I know that's exhausting. But I want you to know that if you need flexibility, time off, remote work, whatever, just ask. We'll make it work." I thanked him, and I meant it. But I didn't take him up on it. I needed the routine. I needed to prove to myself that I could still do my job, still show up, still be competent and reliable. Even if my personal life had imploded, my professional life was intact. That mattered. In early December, we launched the new app feature I'd been managing. It went smoothly. No major bugs, positive user feedback, good press coverage. My team celebrated with drinks at a bar in South Lake Union, and I went because it would have been weird not to. I stayed for 2 hours, nursed a gin and tonic, and left when people started getting drunk and sentimental. On my way out, one of the junior designers, a guy named Marcus, caught up with me. "Hey, Liv. I just wanted to say you've been crushing it. I know things have been rough, but you'd never know it from how you've been leading the team." I smiled. "Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. Also," he said, hesitating, "if you ever want to grab coffee or just, talk about non-work stuff, I'm around. No pressure." It took me a second to realize he was asking me out. My first instinct was to shut it down immediately. But then I paused. He was nice, thoughtful, completely unthreatening. And I realized I had no idea how to date anymore. "That's really kind of you," I said carefully. "But I'm not in a place for that right now. I hope you understand." "Totally," he said, not looking hurt. "The offer stands if things change." I thanked him and walked to my car, feeling a strange mix of flattery and dread. I wasn't ready, not even close. But it was good to know that eventually, maybe, I could be. The holidays were harder than I expected. My mother invited me to come home to Spokane for Thanksgiving. I said no. I couldn't face a table full of relatives asking well-meaning questions or making awkward small talk while avoiding the elephant in the room. Instead, I spent Thanksgiving with Tessa and her girlfriend Claire at their apartment in Ballard. We cooked a small turkey, drank too much wine, and watched bad movies. It was exactly what I needed. But Christmas loomed, and I couldn't avoid it. I drove to Spokane on December 23rd, arriving late in the evening. My parents' house looked the same as it always did. White lights along the roof, a wreath on the door, the smell of cinnamon and pine. My mother hugged me hard when I walked in, holding on longer than usual. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. My father squeezed my shoulder and took my bag. "Your room's all set." That night, after my parents went to bed, I sat in the living room by the Christmas tree, drinking tea and staring at the lights. My younger brother, Ethan, came downstairs and plopped onto the couch next to me. "You okay?" he asked. Ethan was 27, a software engineer in Portland, and the kind of person who said exactly what he thought without worrying about how it sounded. "I'm fine," I said. "That's bullshit." I laughed. "Okay, I'm not fine, but I'm better than I was." "Good." He was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, I always thought Jake was kind of a tool." "You never said that." "Because you seemed happy." But yeah, he had that thing where he acted like he was doing you a favor by being with you. I hated that. I stared at him. Did everyone think that? I don't know. I did. He shrugged. But it doesn't matter what we thought. You're out now. That's what matters. Yeah, I said quietly. I'm out. We sat there for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. And it helped. On Christmas morning, we opened presents and ate my mother's famous cinnamon rolls and pretended everything was normal. But when my aunt asked, "So, Livy, are you seeing anyone?" The table went silent. My mother shot her a look that could have melted glass. No, I said evenly. I'm focusing on myself right now. Well, good for you, my aunt said, clearly realizing her mistake. That's very modern. Ethan snorted into his coffee. I excused myself and went for a walk around the neighborhood, breathing in the cold air and letting the tension drain out of my shoulders. When I got back, my father was waiting on the porch. Your aunt means well, he said. I know, but she's an idiot. I laughed, surprised. My father rarely said anything unkind about anyone. You're doing great, Livy, he said. Better than great. You're handling this with grace. I'm proud of you. My throat tightened. Thanks, Dad. He pulled me into a hug and I let myself lean into it just for a moment. I drove back to Seattle on December 26th and spent the rest of the week in a strange limbo between Christmas and New Year's. I cleaned my apartment. I organized my closet. I threw out old makeup and expired food and a box of Jake's things I'd found in the back of my hall closet. T-shirts, a phone charger, a book he'd never returned. I didn't feel sentimental about any of it. I just wanted it gone. On New Year's Eve, Tessa invited me to a party, but I declined. Instead, I stayed home, ordered Thai food, and watched the ball drop on TV. At midnight, I texted Tessa, "Happy New Year. Love you." She replied immediately, "Love you too. This year is going to be so much better." I wanted to believe her. I opened my journal, the one Dr. Okoye had suggested I keep, and wrote, New Year's resolution. Figure out who I am without him. Build a life that's mine. Don't settle. Don't shrink. Don't apologize for taking up space. I read it back, then closed the journal and set it on my nightstand. It wasn't much, but it was a start. In early January, I got an unexpected email. The subject line read, "From Morgan Reese." My stomach dropped. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Hi, Olivia. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I got your email address from the police report. I hope that's not weird. I wanted to thank you for talking to Detective Ochoa. Your statement helped a lot. I also wanted to apologize. I know I was part of something that hurt you, and I'm sorry. I didn't know the full situation when things started, but that's not an excuse. I should have walked away when I found out about you. I didn't, and I regret that. I also wanted you to know that I filed for a restraining order against Jake, and it was granted. He's not allowed to contact me anymore. I'm not sure if he's tried to contact you, but if he has, I'd encourage you to do the same. He's not who he pretends to be. I'm still figuring out what that means for me, but I wanted you to know that you were right to get out when you did. I hope you're doing okay. Morgan. I read it 3 times. Then I sat back and exhaled slowly. I didn't know what I'd expected from Morgan. Anger, maybe. Defensiveness. Blame. But this was none of those things. It was honest, vulnerable, and weirdly generous. I thought about responding. But what would I say? It's okay? It wasn't. Not entirely. I forgive you? I wasn't sure I did. Thank you? For what? For confirming that Jake was a manipulative asshole? I already knew that. In the end, I closed the email and saved it in a folder. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would be. But I was glad she'd reached out. It closed something. Or maybe it just shifted it into a different shape. Either way, it helped. By mid-January, I started to feel like myself again. Not the old self, the one who'd been engaged and planning a wedding and imagining a future with someone who didn't deserve it, but a new self, sharper, steadier, less willing to compromise. I went to therapy every week. I kept journaling. I started running again, something I'd let slide over the past year. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. I said yes to invitations I would have declined before. I even started thinking about what I wanted, not what I thought I should want, but what actually mattered to me. I wanted to travel. I'd always put it off, waiting for the right time or the right person to go with. Screw that. I could go alone. I wanted to take a pottery class. I'd seen a studio in Wallingford that offered evening sessions. I wanted to read more, write more, cook more, create more. I wanted to stop living my life in preparation for someone else's approval. In late January, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I signed up for a solo trip to Iceland in March. It was impulsive, expensive, completely unlike me. But when I clicked confirm booking, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in months. Excitement. Not for a wedding. Not for a future with someone else. Just for me. For my life. For the things I wanted to see and do and experience. I told Tessa, and she screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "This is amazing," she said. "You're going to have the best time, and you're going to come back a whole new person." "I don't know about that," I said. "I do. Trust me." On a cold Saturday morning in early February, I was at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, working on my laptop when I saw him. Jake. He was across the street, walking with a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, blonde, laughing at something he'd said. My first instinct was to duck, to hide, to avoid any possibility of eye contact. But then I stopped. I watched them for a moment, the way he touched her arm, the way she leaned into him, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world, the same way he'd looked at me, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no jealousy. Just a quiet, detached observation. That used to be me, and now it's not, and that's okay. I turned back to my laptop and kept working. 5 minutes later, they were gone, and I was still there, still whole, still moving forward. That night, I texted Dr. Okoye. "I saw Jake today, and I didn't fall apart. I think that's progress." She replied 20 minutes later. "That's absolutely progress. Be proud of yourself." I was. By the time March arrived, I felt like I'd crossed some invisible threshold. I wasn't the person I'd been 6 months ago. I wasn't even the person I'd been 3 months ago. I was someone new. Someone who'd been broken and put herself back together, piece by piece. The cracks were still there. I could feel them sometimes, late at night or in quiet moments. But they didn't define me. I was more than what had happened to me, more than what he'd done, more than the wedding that didn't happen and the future that fell apart. I was Olivia Grant, 32 years old, project manager, daughter, sister, friend, and I was going to Iceland. On the morning of my flight, I stood in my apartment with my suitcase by the door and looked around. The wedding binder was gone. The dress was gone. The ring was gone. What was left was mine, my space, my life, my choice. I picked up my suitcase, locked the door behind me, and headed to the airport. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the city below, the place where I'd been engaged, where I'd been betrayed, where I'd fallen apart and started over. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not for a relationship, not for someone else to complete me, just hope for myself, for the life I was building, for the woman I was becoming. I opened my journal and wrote, "I am enough. I have always been enough, and I'm just getting started." Then I closed it, leaned back in my seat, and smiled. The future was wide open, and for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. Iceland was everything I needed it to be. Cold, beautiful, vast, unforgiving in the best possible way. I spent 5 days driving the ring road in a rental car, stopping at waterfalls and glaciers and black sand beaches. I soaked in hot springs under the stars. I ate lamb stew and rye bread and chocolate so dark it almost hurt. I talked to strangers, other solo travelers, locals, a couple from Denmark who invited me to join them for dinner one night. And I talked to myself. I asked the questions Dr. Okoye had given me. What do I want? What scares me? What makes me feel alive? The answers surprised me. I wanted to be braver, to take up more space, to stop apologizing for wanting things. I was scared of being alone forever, but I was more scared of settling again. What made me feel alive? Creating things, solving problems, helping people, being in nature, laughing with friends, moving my body, learning new things, not being in a relationship, not planning a wedding, not fitting into someone else's idea of who I should be. On my last night in Iceland, I stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind whipping my hair around my face, and I screamed, not in pain, not in anger, just to hear my own voice echoing back at me. And when I stopped, I felt lighter. I flew back to Seattle on a Tuesday morning, exhausted and sunburned and more myself than I'd been in years. Tessa picked me up from the airport and immediately demanded to see all my photos. "You look so happy," she said, scrolling through my phone. "I am. I'm so proud of you, Liv. Seriously. You did the thing. You rebuilt yourself." "I'm still rebuilding," I said. "But yeah, I did the thing." That night, I unpacked, did laundry, and went through the mail that had piled up while I was gone. There was a postcard from my brother, a bill from my dentist, a flyer for a new yoga studio, and an envelope with no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper with typed text. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish and cowardly, and I hurt you in ways I can't take back. You deserved better. You still do. I hope you find it. Jay." I read it once, then I folded it up, put it back in the envelope, and threw it in the recycling bin. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his regret. I needed to keep moving forward. And that's exactly what I was going to do. Spring came slowly to Seattle, the way it always does. Rain giving way to sun, gray skies softening into blue, cherry blossoms blooming pink and white along the streets. I kept going to therapy. I kept running. I kept working and seeing friends and building the life I wanted. In April, I signed up for that pottery class. I was terrible at it, but I loved it. In May, I got a promotion at work, senior project manager, with a raise and more responsibility. In June, the month I was supposed to get married, I threw a party. Not a sad, bitter party. Not a what could have been party. A celebration. I invited my closest friends, cooked a ridiculous amount of food, and made a toast. A year ago, I thought my life was going one direction. It went a completely different direction. And I'm so fucking glad it did. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for reminding me that I'm more than my worst day. Here's to new beginnings. Everyone cheered. We drank and ate and laughed until midnight. And when they left, I stood in my apartment, my space, my home, my sanctuary, and felt nothing but gratitude. For the pain that had taught me what I deserved, for the betrayal that had set me free, for the broken engagement that had saved my life. I was 32 years old, single, strong, whole, and I was just getting started. The future stretched out ahead of me, wide and wild and full of possibility, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. By the time summer arrived, I'd become someone I barely recognized. And I meant that in the best possible way. The woman who'd crawled under Jake's bed a year ago, who'd found his mistress hiding there like something out of a bad movie, felt like a different person. Someone smaller. Someone who'd been willing to make herself fit into a life that was never really hers. I wasn't that woman anymore. On a warm Saturday in July, I met Tessa and Claire for brunch at a cafe on Capitol Hill. We sat outside under the awning, drinking mimosas and eating French toast while the city buzzed around us. "So," Tessa said, grinning at me over her glass, "you seem different." Different how? I don't know. Lighter? Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore. I thought about it. She was right. The weight I'd been carrying, the shame, the anger, the confusion, had gradually dissolved over the past months. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly, like ice melting in spring. I feel different, I admitted. I feel like myself again, or maybe like myself for the first time. Claire raised her glass. To live. Who took the worst thing that could have happened and turned it into the best thing? We clinked glasses, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the champagne. That afternoon, I went home and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking about something for weeks, and I'd finally decided to do it. I started a blog. Nothing fancy, just a simple site where I could write about what I'd learned, what I'd been through, what I wished someone had told me when I was sitting in that lawyer's office, trying to figure out how to untangle my life from someone who'd never really valued it. I called it Reconstruction. The first post was short. A year ago, I found out the man I was supposed to marry had been lying to me for months. The wedding was 3 months away. I had a dress, a venue, 200 guests on the list. I thought my life was over. It wasn't. It was just beginning. This blog is for anyone who's ever had to rebuild themselves after betrayal, after loss, after the collapse of a future they thought was guaranteed. It's about boundaries and self-worth and learning that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you small. It's about reconstruction, the hard, messy, beautiful work of becoming whole again. Welcome. I hit publish and closed my laptop. I didn't know if anyone would read it. I didn't really care. It was enough to have written it, to have claimed that space for myself. In August, I did something I'd never done before. I went on a date. Not because I was looking for a relationship, not because I was lonely, but because I was curious. His name was Daniel. We'd matched on an app that Tessa had convinced me to download. He was a landscape architect, 35, with kind eyes and a profile that didn't scream red flags. We met for coffee on a Sunday afternoon at a place in Fremont. I was nervous. My hands were shaking when I walked in. But when I saw him, sitting by the window, reading a book, looking up with a genuine smile when I approached, I relaxed. We talked for 2 hours. About work, about Seattle, about travel. He'd spent 6 months in New Zealand and had opinions about the best hiking trails. I told him about Iceland, about driving alone through landscapes that felt like another planet. He didn't ask why I'd gone alone. He just said, "That sounds amazing." When we left, he walked me to my car. "I had a really nice time," he said. "I'd love to do this again if you're interested." I hesitated. Not because I wasn't interested, but because I needed to be honest. "I had a nice time too," I said. "But I should tell you, I'm not looking for anything serious right now. I just got out of something complicated, and I'm still figuring things out." "That's fair," he said easily. "I'm not in a rush. If you want to grab dinner sometime, no pressure, just let me know." He didn't push, didn't try to convince me. Just accepted what I said and left space for me to decide. That, more than anything, made me want to see him again. We went out twice more over the next few weeks. Dinner, a walk along the waterfront, a concert at the Crocodile. It was easy, comfortable. No games, no pressure, no hidden agendas. But by the third date, I knew. I liked him, but I wasn't ready. I told him over drinks at a bar in Ballard. Daniel, I need to be honest with you. You're great, really. But I'm not in a place where I can be present in a relationship, and it's not fair to you to keep going if I'm not all in. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I appreciate you telling me. For what it's worth, I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing, taking your time, figuring out what you want. Thank you for understanding. Of course, he smiled. And hey, if things change down the line, reach out. I'm not going anywhere. We parted as friends, and I walked away feeling proud of myself. A year ago, I would have forced it. I would have convinced myself that I should want this, that I should try harder, that maybe if I just gave it more time, it would feel right. But I'd learned something important. Should wasn't a good enough reason to do anything. In September, I got an unexpected message on my blog. A woman named Sarah had read my posts and wanted to share her story. She'd found out her husband was having an affair after 15 years of marriage. They had 2 kids. She was drowning in logistics and grief and didn't know how to move forward. I wrote her back. We exchanged emails. I shared what had helped me: therapy, boundaries, letting go of the idea that I could control how other people saw me. She wrote back a week later. Thank you. I've been so focused on trying to make everyone else okay that I forgot I'm allowed to fall apart. Your words reminded me that I can do both, grieve and rebuild. I needed that. I stared at her message for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. This was why I'd started the blog, not for me. For the women who were where I'd been, who needed to hear that they weren't crazy, weren't overreacting, weren't alone. Over the next few months, more messages came. Women in their 20s, their 40s, their 50s. Women who'd been betrayed, gaslit, abandoned. Women who were trying to figure out how to stand up again after being knocked down. I responded to everyone. And with each response, I felt more certain that this, helping others navigate what I'd navigated, was part of my purpose. By October, I'd been writing consistently for 4 months. My blog had a small but growing readership. I'd been featured in a local online magazine as part of a series on women rebuilding after loss. And I'd started thinking about what came next. One evening, I sat down with my journal and wrote, "What do I want my life to look like 5 years from now?" I closed my eyes and let myself imagine it. I saw myself still in Seattle, maybe in a house instead of an apartment. Something small but mine, with a yard and a garden and space to breathe. I saw myself still working, but maybe with more flexibility. Maybe consulting, maybe freelancing, maybe building something of my own. I saw myself traveling more. Solo trips, group trips, adventures that had nothing to do with anyone else's schedule or preferences. I saw myself surrounded by people who respected my boundaries, who celebrated my wins, who showed up when things got hard. And maybe I saw myself in a relationship with someone who valued my independence as much as I did. Someone who didn't need me to be smaller so they could feel bigger, but that was optional. The rest wasn't. I opened my eyes and wrote it all down. Then I made a plan. In November, I had my last session with Dr. Okoye. Not because I was cured or because I didn't need therapy anymore, but because I'd reached a point where I felt equipped to handle things on my own. We could always schedule more sessions if I needed them, but for now, I was okay. "You've done remarkable work," she said as we wrapped up. "When you first came in, you were in survival mode. Now you're thriving. That's not an accident. That's you." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. For everything, for helping me see that I didn't have to have it all figured out, that it was okay to just take it one day at a time. "You did the work, Liv. I just held the space." I left her office feeling grateful and proud and ready. December came, and with it, a full year since the breakup. Tessa insisted we mark the occasion with a divorce party, even though I reminded her I'd never actually been married. Doesn't matter, she said. You ended something toxic and rebuilt yourself from scratch. That deserves to be celebrated. So we threw a party at her apartment. Just close friends, good food, lots of wine. At one point, Tessa made a toast. To live. Who taught us all what it looks like to walk away from something that's wrong, even when it's hard? Who showed us that you don't need someone else to be whole? And who proved that the best revenge is becoming the person you were always meant to be? Everyone cheered. I felt my eyes sting with tears, but they were good tears. That night, after everyone left, I drove home through the city, windows down despite the cold, music playing, feeling more at peace than I had in years. I thought about Jake, briefly, distantly. I wondered if he ever thought about me, if he regretted what he'd done, if he'd learned anything. And then I let it go. Because it didn't matter. His choices had set me free. And I'd taken that freedom and built something beautiful. On New Year's Eve, I stayed home again. But this time it wasn't because I was avoiding anything. It was because I wanted to. I made myself a nice dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat by the window, watching the city lights. At midnight, I raised my glass to no one but myself. Here's to year 2, I said out loud. To more adventures, more growth, more courage, more me. I took a sip and smiled. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Happy New Year, babe. Love you so much. So proud of you. I replied, love you too. Thank you for everything. Then I opened my journal and wrote one last entry for the year. A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Turns out I'd just lost the wrong things. The things that were holding me back. The things that were making me smaller. This year, I found myself. I found my voice. I found my strength. And I realized that being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen. Being with someone who doesn't see your worth is. I'm not afraid anymore, not of being single, not of starting over, not of the future. Because I know now that I can handle whatever comes. I've already survived the worst. Everything else is just life. And life, it turns out, is pretty damn good when you're living it for yourself. I closed the journal and set it aside. Outside, the city sparkled. Somewhere, fireworks were going off. People were kissing, celebrating, making resolutions they might not keep. And here I was, alone in my apartment, content, whole, free. This wasn't the life I'd planned a year ago. It was better, because it was mine. And as I sat there in the quiet, I realized something profound. The woman who'd found Jake's mistress under the bed had been looking for answers in all the wrong places. She'd been looking for closure from him, for an explanation, for something that would make sense of the betrayal. But the real answer wasn't in him. It was in her, in choosing to walk away, in choosing herself, in refusing to settle for less than she deserved. That woman, scared, hurt, confused, had been stronger than she knew. And the woman I'd become, confident, whole, unafraid, owed her everything. I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my palm against the cold glass. The city stretched out before me, infinite and full of possibility, and I smiled, because I knew deep in my bones that whatever came next, whether it was another solo trip, another date, another heartbreak, another triumph, I would handle it. I would show up for myself. I would honor my boundaries. I would choose courage over comfort. I would keep rebuilding, keep growing, keep becoming. And I would never ever make myself small again. The future was mine, and I was ready for it. If you're reading this and you're in the middle of your own reconstruction, whether it's from betrayal, loss, or something else entirely, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are breaking open. And on the other side of that breaking is a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more authentically yourself than you've ever been. It won't be easy. Some days, it will feel impossible. But you will survive this, and you will thrive. Trust yourself. Honor your boundaries. Choose your own healing. The life you're meant to live is waiting. Go build it.